What's up, everyone? Invisible Walls episode 156 is here, and oh my gosh, it is loaded with awesome games today. I think this is just the perfect storm of a week where we've gone to a ton of events, and finally the embargoes are breaking. We have so much to talk about. I don't want to spend a lot of time jibber-jabbering. Here to do that today is Marcus Beer.
I'm going to jabber more than gibber.
Mike Damiani's here today.
What's up, everyone?
Patrick Morales is in the house.
Salutations.
And party people. Finally, after 156 episodes of Invisible Walls, we have a very, very special guest on the show today. Welcome to IW, Jeff Keighley.
What's up, Shane? Good to be here. I'm sorry it's taken me so long. I'm always traveling around shooting GTTV, so it's hard to coordinate schedules. But I saw you in the hall this morning, and I said, let's do Invisible Walls today. So
And you made it, yeah.
I'm excited
We've
to be
been trying
here.
to get this guy on for quite a while. Finally, he's here. Finally, I get to turn the tables on you for
That's
once.
true, because you're on our new bonus round that we're filming next week. It'll be
Well,
coming
usually
out
it's
soon,
you
so.
peppering me with questions on bonus round. This time I get to turn the tables. It's going to be an
Alright,
awesome show, everyone, so please stick around. Here we go.
Okay, look, we both said a lot of things that you're going to regret. But I think we can put our differences behind us. For science.
All right, folks. First up on the docket today, we're going to talk about Portal 2. Obviously, our review is up already, so you kind of know our perspective on that level. But everybody here pretty much has played it, or at least played a little bit of it. And I think we need some alternating opinions here. So, Jeff, you played it. You actually played it before I did. I had to rush through it over the weekend for review.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to play it actually a couple months ago up at Valve because I wrote a final hour story about the sort of making a Portal that's coming out on iPad this weekend actually, which will be cool. So yeah, I think it's one of the best games I played in recent memory. I mean, it's Valve, so I mean, whenever they bring out a game, they always push things in a new direction. I think Portal is interesting in that the first game was so special and such a surprise when it came out in Orange Box. You didn't know what to expect, and to recreate that feeling with Portal 2 is almost impossible since you're still using portals. Valve actually originally started the game with no portals and no GLaDOS, and it was their original idea of it, and it was going to be a prequel set back in the 1950s. So yeah, I think they really delivered. It's got a great story. It's got a lot of surprises in it. It's not the big sort of preview of Half-Life Episode 3 that some people were
I'm starting to wonder if
speculating.
Portal is Episode 3, because there are loose ties between Portal
the fans,
the Half-Life universe.
Yeah, the fans want something there. But I think, it's really well written. I think, the paint mechanic really works. And it's just such a different style of game that, it makes you think. I had a lot of fun playing through it. The co-op's really cool as well. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of replayability in the co-op, but it's a lot of fun to go through that campaign.
There's not really a whole lot of replayability, period.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but it is, I think everyone was wondering, how long is the game? I mean, it's a full-scale game. I mean, you probably spent most of the weekend, going through both modes.
Yeah, playing that game like that by yourself with no help is a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. When I played it at Valve, I did have to call the hint line once or twice to get some
I
some
didn't
tips
have
from the
that,
developers.
dude. There's a couple
Exactly.
points where I literally just wanted to smash my head against the wall.
Yeah, and it's a tough game, but I mean, it's Valve's always going to deliver great stuff, and after you play through it, I think what surprised me the most was the story was really cool. It was also just funny. It's like Eric Wolpaw.
Yeah, the writing's really, really
and
good.
the guys there. You just don't there's not a lot of humor in games, and so it's got that different tone. The paint
And it's
mechanic
not just
is
humor.
cool.
It's not like beat you over the head humor. It's really smartly written, insightful humor.
Yep. No, I mean, the Wheatley character, played by Stephen Merchant, the voiceover that he does is fantastic. And yeah, so really well put together game. And, I'll fully admit when they first said, hey, we're going to do Portal 2, I was a little skeptical and like, what are you going to do to top the first one? But I think it's just as good, if not better, than Portal 1. And, the critic reviews, I think, have been through the roof. I think Metacritic is at like 95 or something like that right now.
It's actually the highest rated game of the year so far with the critics.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Not
what
with
about the fans?
Users, bizarrely enough, Metacritic's down at 7.4, but that was up.
It's better than
yesterday.
4 or whatever it
Well,
was.
yeah,
What's going on there? Is it like a smear campaign?
Well, it seems like in the last, we record this on the Wednesday, so in the last 24 hours, there's like a slew of 10s having come in from, the hardcore fans who are really sort of like pulling out. But there are a lot of people who are predominantly on the PC side who are criticizing it, and I haven't played it yet, so I'm just, saying what they have to say. First complaint is DLC. the fact that there is $80 of
Yeah, you
worth
see
of
that
DLC.
I think is like
But it's all cosmetic.
It's
yeah,
all,
it's
yeah,
great.
all
It's like you can put a
cosmetic and-
hat on, Atlas or Peabody, and sure that's $249, $299. But it's like to say that's DLC.
That's
I would
not
get the
downloadable
argument if
content.
you were, if they decided to put like 6 test chambers as DLC and you had to download them. But it's like $80 DLC. That's
And
such a
that's the
silly
thing, it's
argument
only-
when
I
it's like
seriously
cosmetic
thought
stuff.
that was a
Yeah.
joke at first because I know like Team Fortress 2 is known far and wide for its DLC, and I thought that when they announced that Portal 2 would have emotes on sale for $2, I thought that was just kind of like a jab
But
at
that's
themselves.
like that's like someone saying like, oh, a game, Star Wars put up a lightsaber in the Avatar store for Xbox, and it's like that's DLC for the game. And it really has not much to do with the game.
And
so I
you,
think
and
that's
you
a
can
stupid
actually
argument.
buy all those emotes for in a package for $34.99. It's just $80 when
You don't
they
need
first
any
come
of
out.
that
was
stuff.
complaint number
It's
one.
not. They're not levels. If you want to put a hat on your freaking robot, you can be an idiot and spend $5.
That's what I mean. I think that's
don't really
insane. Like,
care.
I wouldn't spend
people-
$5 for a hat, but clearly there are people who are probably
Right.
buying
Let
it.
them do it.
Hey,
People
there
are
you go.
saying
I don't
that
give a
it-
shit.
People are bitching that it's not in the game. Next up, they're complaining that it's way too short compared to the last game.
That's crazy, though.
That's
I mean,
it's at least the campaign's at least double.
Yeah, and then you have co-op.
the
I mean,
co-op is-
Portal 1 was like 3 to 4 hours. I would say Portal 2 is, probably at least 8.
Oh yeah, at least
And then you add co-op, which again
it's
is
almost as long as the
long as
single
that.
player campaign.
Yeah, so I mean, if someone's saying that, they
I
haven't
mean,
played the
the
game.
other thing you got to remember, a lot of these reviews hit like not like literally a couple of hours after the game went live. On
I think it's people that
Steam,
were
so I
pissed
think-
about the ARG, that they thought they were, playing all those games on Steam to release Portal early, and it ended up, the game only released, I think it was like around 9:30 on Monday night. So I think that's just, people kind of spamming Metacritic. 'Cause, I mean, that is, it's a amazing game. I mean, for someone to rate that as like a 3 or 4 out of 10, I'd love to see what they rate the other shit that comes out all year. 'Cause
So-
it's-
Everything else gets a 0, right?
yeah, I mean,
Next complaint, again, this is primarily PC gamers, and they are complaining that it seems that the visuals are dumbed down and the game seems to have been developed more with the consoles in mind than the PC.
Well, that's an interesting point because, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there this screenshot floating around where someone was going through a corridor and it did an auto-save screen and it says, auto-saving now, please do not turn off your console, and it was a screen cap from the PC version.
Who cares?
yeah,
A lot of games
I mean, the
these days are-
visuals, I mean, it
PC
definitely-
gamers care. Trust
No,
me.
I think, visually the game, I think, looks great.
I mean, it
you
looks. It's a clean game. Even on the PC, it's not like some crazy resolution is going to change the look of that game all that much. Everything is
It's
gray,
still a
white,
Source
and
engine.
black. It's like, get over it. What I love most about Portal 2 is when I played the first Portal, by the time I got to the end of it, I felt like it had run its course. To me, it ended at the perfect time. I was like, I'm kind of getting sick of this. Oh, it's over. Perfect. So my big concern was, okay, if they make the sequel twice as long, how are they going to sustain me and keep me engaged until the end of the game? And they did it. They did it. They did it with the plot. They broke it up. They kind of made parts of it that were more like traditional action-adventure games instead of the test chamber.
Well, that's
after
why I
test
love
chamber.
those moments where you're sort of becomes more like Prince of Persia, where you're sort of trying to figure out how to use portals to navigate the environment.
Yeah.
I think that was a real smart twist, moving away from just test chamber after test chamber. And I really like that twist where it wasn't about turrets, trying to track you down. It was just trying like you see something, you're like, how the hell do I get up there?
It also broke up like the visual style because those test chambers, they all look the same. So they finally crack you open into these, and also gives you a sense of scale of how big Aperture is, because you don't really realize when you're in these little rooms, the place is just ginormous. It's like the size of a planet, and some of these areas will break open and you'll see like these crazy vistas. And I just felt like they did a good job of pacing the whole thing. You never stay in the test chambers so long that you get sick of them. Right around the time you start to be like, okay, now what? They'll jump you out of that and start putting you into the more action-adventure elements. Like, just very... I guess the one word I would use, and if we did a one-word review for this game, which we used to do, it would just be smart.
Yep.
I mean, playing the game, the people who make this game are way smarter than me. The design choices they made are smart. The way they pace the game is smart. You feel smart after you play it. You're like, man, I'm not an idiot. I figured
And
that
that's
out.
a different feeling than what
Yeah.
you feel with most games. Because
And
then
that's
you go
why I
through,
haven't played it yet.
makes you feel good about yourself, Marcus.
Oh,
But-
no?
But yeah, that's what I love about Valve too. I think it's like an interesting evolution of the company because they've done so many hardcore shooters, and now this is like the game's rated E10 plus. It's like I think it appeals to a wider demographic of folks. It's just it's a game that can push the industry in kind of a new direction.
Sure.
It's had a very smart ad campaign as well. The
yeah.
TV
There's
ads
that
in
word again.
particular. No, I mean, but it is their ad campaign. People have been probably seeing it all over the shop. It's it's kind of cute. It reminds you of WALL-E to start off with, so it sucks those people in, and then it's like it's time to play with science, and that is going to inspire parents to go and shell out $60 because wow, this isn't a shooter where people get killed. It's all about physics, and it's about problem solving. Smart.
My big complaint with it is that there really is no replay value. So even after you finish the game, you don't get a lot of the bonuses you got at the end of the first portal with like the time trials and all that. Also, cooperatively, there are no leaderboards, so it's not like you can see how quickly another tandem finished something and try to beat their time. So I feel like maybe the end game could have been a little better supported, but what you get that's on the disc for the time that it lasts, I think is awesome.
It's,
and I'm sure
it's
they'll
worth
do
$60.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's it'll be, I'm sure, a game of the year contender. I mean, there's a
It'll
lot
certainly
of big
be in the
stuff.
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out, obviously, towards the end of the year. But for the first half of the year, it certainly is, the biggest release, and I think people were expecting it to be good, and I think it fully delivers.
So your best game of the year so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm borderline. I still enjoy Dead Space a lot.
Yeah, no,
but-
Dead Space is up there. I mean, there haven't, the interesting thing is, like, last year, I remember I was having these discussions with our VGA producers, and it was like, by June, there were legitimately probably, like, 4 or 5 Game of the Year contenders that had come out. This year, it's like, there hasn't been anything near that. I mean, last year you had Mass Effect out by now, you had God of War, you had Red Dead about to come out, Super Mario Galaxy was about to come out, a lot of big games that come out. And this year, it's like, it's Portal, Dead Space, I don't know what else.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Nothing is jumping
There's
to
a
mind.
handful of other games that fall just a cut below those. But
Yeah,
you're right. This
Killzone
year
was good,
compared
but
to
it's like,
last year, it's not
Right,
it's
so that's
not
why I
the
say
same
Portal's great, but it's yes, it's the best game of the year so far, but it's not like there's been 6 amazing 90+ rated games, and we'll see. I mean, I think the summer will be dry. I mean, LA Noire is coming out. We'll see how that does, but the fall is just going to be insane.
Watch out for Infamous. That's what I say.
Yeah, I can't wait to play Infamous.
To the time after Oblivion opened, when the sons of Skyrim would spill their own blood. But no one wanted to believe they even existed.
All right, next we're going to talk about a game that, quite honestly, I think may be one of the most popular on GameTrailers.com right now. Of all the VGA exclusives, it was probably the one that shocked me the most with its interest from our users. And that game is Skyrim. Brooks, you checked it out. Jeff, you also had a chance to check out the game. Is all the hype justified?
Yes.
Yeah?
No, it is.
Good, short segment. Let's go.
Let's wrap. No, it's great. I hadn't shown a lot of interest in this game.
Now, did you like
I
the
saw
prior
the
games?
teaser. No, I did not. I didn't jump into them. I didn't get totally invested in them, but there's something about Skyrim during that presentation that just made me
You
say,
love
wow.
the dragons, that's what you like.
It's the dragons, yeah. They finally introduced dragons.
It seems, more accessible than the previous, Elder Scrolls games, and I think, one thing that is really interesting about it is that, the Elder Scrolls games, the graphics have always, not been particularly great.
Yeah.
And this one is the first one where I really feel like the graphics aren't going to hold it back. And even like Fallout and stuff like that. I mean, they're good games. You look at Mass Effect, the bar that's set graphically now for sort of Western RPGs like that. And this one feels accessible. It looks really great, and I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff to it. And yeah, we went through the demo. Todd Howard took us through it for about an hour and showed different elements of it. And I think it looks good. I mean, I still have some questions around like the dialogue system and what they're doing there. I think, still I prefer sort of the way Mass Effect does that and some other RPGs. But, in terms of combat and the action, it just looks really accessible. So I think it'll probably be the most successful one. And yeah, I agree with you, Shane. It's amazing to see the amount of interest in that game.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. I really didn't like Oblivion. I know a lot of people loved it. I tried playing it on the PC and
Why
the
not?
360. It
Yeah,
just
what's
left
your
me.
problem?
It just left me cold. I mean, just that trying to get in it initially,
Right.
and you're stuck in the dungeon. You're trying to work your way out.
Well, the thing is,
It's
like, the accessibility wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what I like about this.
Yeah, it
It's
was
like
slightly
it's-
intimidating. The first one was. It was
do you
too
think
big
it's
for its
as
own good.
accessible as say Fallout 3 was? Because I mean, Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games of all
No,
time.
I think so. Yeah, that's the thing with you're right. Like the other ones, it always felt like it's just you're starting in this Dungeons and Dragons mode, and it was just really laborious to sort of get the game going. And this one, I mean, we didn't necessarily see the beginning of the game, but what I saw was like they're dragons. Like Todd said, you're not going to spend 15 hours playing the game and then see a dragon. It's
No.
like dragons are there right at the beginning. They're part of the lore. I think there's I think a lot of the RPG makers are getting smarter about sort of making these games very accessible to a wider audience from the get go. So yeah, I think it's it looks beautiful, and it's just you even walk around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it appeals to you, and you see the dragons, and I'm sure they haven't talked about it, but I'm sure at some point you're going to be able to mount the dragons and fly them around and stuff like that. So
Now, did they build a new graphics engine? You keep mentioning how much better the graphics look.
yeah, it's
The details are
They're not using
astounding right
Gamebryo
now.
anymore, right?
Yeah,
I think they took Gamebryo out the back and shot
exactly.
it.
So yeah, it's not Gamebryo anymore. I think it's all in house though. They're not using Unreal or Crytek or anything like that. They've sort of rebuilt it. The tech side, and there's also this thing called Radiant Story, which used to have Radiant AI, and Todd's talking about this idea of Radiant Story, which will create more permutations in the storytelling as well. But yeah, I think the graphics look really good. I mean, that's the debut gameplay trailer they put out online a couple months ago. I think shocked everyone about how beautiful it looked.
And Todd was saying how excited the team was to finally start using colors that aren't gray and
Brown.
from Fallout. He's like, oh, we could use green again. Awesome.
Yeah, does it take you 10 hours to get to wherever Skyrim is?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the snow and the weather effects look really cool. So it's very early going in that game. I mean, it was an hour demo, but I still feel like we've only seen a sliver of it, and I'm sure we'll see more at E3. But it's gonna be it's gonna be great, and it needs to be great to come out in November and compete with everything else.
11. Yeah, they and getting back to the dragons actually speak to you, which I thought was pretty cool.
Do I like
It's a
that?
talking
or do
dragon.
I not?
No, it's-
Actually, just to add to that, that's actually one of the coolest things that I read about the game, where there's this whole dragon language that the player learns. And for those that don't know out there, you learn like single words like fuss, ro, da.
Yeah,
and you
they're
kinda
called
build-
dragon shouts.
shouts,
They're
exactly.
abilities that you
Yeah,
earn
and
as
you
go
build
through.
you build your vocabulary, right? And over time, you get to string them together, kind of like a song in Ocarina of Time, and it does a spell, right?
Yes, exactly. And then there's different levels of those spells themselves.
Besides that, have they revealed any other cool gameplay kind of mechanics like that?
We did see a lot of combat.
Yeah, how does the combat work?
The combat's still a little iffy with the camera, and especially when you're using a sword and shield. But the magic spells, I was really impressed with those.
Yeah, the
abilities.
magic. I mean, it looks really good. Again, it's like
You
visually.
could combine the magic spells and have like fire in one hand, ice in the other if you want, and then
It's
just
got
go.
sort of a little bit of Bioshock sort of
And then you
feel
can put
to
them
it. I
together
think.
and boil a kettle.
Now, this sounds really ambitious, but that also makes me a little nervous. Obviously, their track record in the past hasn't been the best with, putting out games that are essentially finished, lots of bugs in their games. Switching up the formula so much, does that make you guys nervous at all that maybe they may encounter even more issues like that?
Yeah, what's interesting is I dealt with them a lot last fall when they were talking about announcing it at VGAs, and they were very adamant from the get-go that they wanted to announce a date, they wanted to stick to it, and I talked to Todd a lot last week at their event in Park City, and I mean they feel very confident that they're going to make the date.
Well, we know they'll
November.
make the date.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Todd. I mean, I don't think him and his team. They're not kind of guys who are going to cut corners. I think. I mean, the legacy of those games.
I also think, I think
The
that-
legacy of those games says that they do cut corners, though.
well, I
When
mean,
you're that
don't
ambitious
know.
and the world's that big and there's so much going on, it's bound to
Yeah,
happen.
it's like
It's
any-
kinda hard
anything
to
that
put the
big, yeah.
blame.
and the Gamebryo engine wasn't exactly, that was creaking and during Fallout 3 and then was collapsing by the time New Vegas came around. So I think a lot of the problems they had were with the Gamebryo engine.
I mean, you say that you can't blame them. Who do you blame? You have to blame the developer.
I mean, to Elder Scrolls' credit, it's hard to think of any other game around that time that kind of did the same thing. So, I mean, it was.
what about
buggy,
New
no doubt.
Vegas? I mean, what's the excuse for New Vegas?
Obsidian Entertainment.
Yeah, but it's still got their name on it.
Well, that's just,
Yeah, that was. That was a weird one, right? To have Fallout not being done by Bethesda Game Studios, and yeah, I think this is return to form for Todd and his team. They've been working on this, since Fallout 3, and Fallout 3 is a great game. I think there's a lot there, and you're right. I'm sure they will have things that they have to cut and features, that won't make it. Although I think they're being pretty careful about what they're promising with this one.
They're
I mean,
saving all that for DLC.
Yeah. Here's the $1 million question though. Will there be horse armor?
Oh, they talked about that,
see.
didn't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people asked about, will there be horseback riding and this and that. And I think Todd, when I interviewed him for GTTV, I think he said he wouldn't confirm it, but he definitely sort of suggested that it'll be there if
Yeah.
it works correctly. So.
And getting back to the combat real fast, I just wanted to mention during the demo, he did not do a lot of up close and personal one-on-one attacks. He tended to use a lot of projectile weapons. He favored the bow and arrow a lot, and he had 2 perks attached to his bow. One slowed down time, which I thought was kind of cool, and then the other 2 was iron sights with the bow. So he's a little cheap, he'd go after these guys, and then they'd be running very slowly, and he'd get those headshots off. So yeah, and then getting back to the spells, he used a lot of spells too.
So let me throw another question at you. You mentioned earlier accessibility. Now, we just came off Dragon Age 2, where they probably took it to the nth degree of trying to make it accessible and really dumbed it down and got a lot of people, RPGers, myself included, quite kind of pissed at it. Do you think they're not going that far? So when you say it's accessible, it's still going to appeal to the hardcore RPGers?
Yeah, and I think it's also there's accessibility of the gameplay, but also just of the concept. And I think this even that VGA announcement trailer. I mean, didn't didn't say a lot, but I think people just got excited by the lore. So I think that the lore will be more accessible. And yeah, definitely when you play it, I mean, it's going to be a hardcore Bethesda RPG at the end of the day, I think. I mean, I saw nothing there to suggest that it's going to be memorizing patterns and hitting buttons in a certain way. I mean, I think it's going to be stats and all those things driving that. But that's all these RPG guys. I think they're trying to make it more accessible, yet still please the hardcore. And I don't think
That's
everyone
a
does
tough
get
balance
there.
to walk.
It is.
Yeah, and no one's really, like you could look at Mass Effect 2. I mean, some people said, oh, well, that went too action oriented, and then that's like, what are they going to do with 3? And it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I feel supremely confident that Todd and those guys are going to deliver a good game for those core Elder Scrolls fans. Like the question is, how much wider will the appeal be, especially in November when everything else is coming out? So it's like you've got Uncharted, you've probably got Call of Duty somewhere around there. I mean, there's a lot of big stuff. So
Gears.
Gears. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of big games. So in the November time frame, how much wider can a game like that go beyond the core? Because it's also going to be a huge game.
Yeah. Now they brought us to this event, but didn't let us have any footage. Brooks, you've had to actually write a blog about the game because we have no way to cover it. When have they said when we'll get another look at this game? I know people are freaking out wanting to see it.
Well, when they showed it to us during that presentation, they said only 6 people outside of the development team have seen it at that point. So that was really cool, special first look for us. I hope they show it more often because what we saw, I mean, really everybody had a really good.
They're going to have to unload at E3.
Yeah, I mean,
Please do.
coming November. I mean, E3,
No shame,
believe it or
show
not, is I don't know what is this like 5-6 weeks away now. So I think, I'm sure there'll be a huge presence at E3 for it. But Bethesda's always pretty deliberate in not putting out a ton of footage of their games in advance. Remember even Fallout 3, like they were pretty careful about what they put out. So I think we'll definitely see more at E3, but I doubt we'll see anything before then. But who knows?
You participate in the most important Mortal Kombat in history. This tournament, the 10th after 9 Outworld victories, will determine Earthrealm's fate.
All right, next up, I would say probably the biggest surprise so far this year, as far as the quality of the game versus my expectations, that game is Mortal Kombat.
You think so?
Yeah. You gave it a 9.4.
When the demo
a
came
really
out,
good
though,
game.
Yeah,
when
but
the
I mean,
demo
it's Mortal
was really
Kombat.
good.
Mortal Kombat and 9.4 have never been mentioned in the same sentence together.
I think
enough.
there's something special about that MK game. Like it's interesting is the DC one, a couple of years ago, I think people were like really hyped on that.
Yeah.
And their reviews I think were, okay for it, solid. But yeah, this one for whatever reason, it's like it really and I haven't played enough of it, so I'm curious to hear from you guys. Like how does it sort of cross over from that, very good to like excellent level? I mean, is it just like it's so well refined? Is it
Well, one thing I'll say is the reviews have been kind of all over the place.
Okay.
And if you read the reviews, a lot of times the reviewers will sort of give their personal history with Mortal Kombat. And what it seems to me is people who have grown up with MK like this new MK a lot more than people who are really young and didn't go through the whole transformation and evolution of the franchise. But you're young, Patrick. You reviewed it, and you still have an affinity for it.
Well, I grew up with the original MK, and actually, people that know me know that I'm a Street Fighter guy primarily. I haven't really been the hugest fan of MK, which kind of tells you already something about my opinion of the game.
Yeah.
As for why I like it so much, I feel like I've played all the MK games since the original trilogy, MK4, all up to now. And I think for the first time in a really long time, this is the first Mortal Kombat game where they actually spent their time on it and really wanted to make a quality product. And it reflects as much in what you eventually get in the game. I think maybe for a lot of people that are not quite hardcore gamers, or rather hardcore fighting game fans, they'll pick up a game like, Street Fighter 4 or Marvel vs. Capcom 3, play it for maybe a week and get tired of it. But I could see someone just getting MK and spending so much time with it because they pack so much content into it.
It feels like, I mean, when Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 came out, on the arcades and the Genesis and the Super NES, I mean, they were really, really fun games that like took it beyond. And the games since then have kind of smacked of cash in.
Well,
and
MK2 is still my favorite Mortal Kombat game. I have not had a chance to play this one yet. This may supplant it, but I still enjoy Mortal Kombat 2 better than more than all of them.
To me, this one feels as like going back to those games for the first time, obviously with way more characters, much better graphics. I mean, it's everything. And you were saying about DC versus Mortal Kombat. That was a fun game, but it was hampered by the teen rating. It's looked like they used that almost as their beta, and it's like, all right, now we turn on.
They push the limit.
Everything. Yeah.
I mean, just putting those two games side by side, it's night and day. I mean, it's clear that they spent so much time and effort on this, and they really wanted to make it good.
Do you think a big part of it, of why you like it so much, is because they went back to the 2D gameplay versus the 3D stuff they were fiddling around with?
I mean, you could say that, but look at MK versus DC. It does the same thing. It's a 2D gameplay, with 3D graphics. But more than that, they really paid mind to the facets that make a fighting game good. More than just concentrating on a very bloody presentation, which it certainly goes back to. It is really mindful about how fighting games are played now. A very technical, but easy to pick up. Lots of depth if you want to go there. And just tons of ways to express yourself creatively and imaginatively through combos and moves. But besides being a really solid fighter, just the fact that they've taken the single player elements to this whole nother level with things like the challenge tower and story mode, which is easily
the design section of our review. I was just like sitting there with my mouth hanging open. I was
it's
like,
a ton of things.
Gosh, man, how much they put in there, and they've done that in the past. They had these corny little action adventure things, but they were always like I think they had
They're all
kart
half-assed.
racing and a chess game and
They had
a puzzle
Tetris,
game.
It was
They
clearly
were all
a case of
half-assed.
where they just wanted to put as much as possible. But here, like, every single thing matters and every single thing is fun. Like, that's what counts. You could not even care about playing online that much and still have a ton of fun and lots of quality time and replayability playing offline just because they put so much good stuff there.
Now the campaign looks pretty campy.
It is,
Is it
yeah.
campy good or campy bad?
I think it's campy great.
Okay.
I mean, how about this? When I first popped in the game, as soon as story mode started, people would just start like lining up behind me and just watching it. And like, what game can you say sustains a person's interest?
If they're not playing,
a fighting game.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Well, I mean,
like much
you
less
know,
a fighting game, right?
Yeah. No, this just feels like the way Mortal Kombat should be, and it's they had so many missteps in the past. I really liked MK versus DC, but it was so held back by the teen rating. And this time, I mean, just watching, I sat and watched you play, and then Justin play, and they also, the way they bring the newbies into it with the training sessions, and they actually give you some of the fatalities to start off with, so you can learn the combos and how to position yourself. It's just a very smart, polished product. Perhaps it doesn't do anything ultra new, but everything it does to such a high level.
How's the netcode?
The netcode is really good, and actually one thing I really like about this that not a whole lot of other fighting games do is with the King of the Hill mode, which I mentioned in the review. And for those that haven't seen it yet, it's basically when you start up a player room, there's like a little frame that goes around the main gameplay screen that shows everyone's avatars kind of watching the match as you're participating in it. And it's really cool because not only can you talk in voice chat and reflect in real time like what's happening, but also you can have your little avatar like do thumbs up. You can give them a rating after they've
Do
finished
people
the
actually
match.
do that? Do they sit and watch other people's
Oh,
matches?
totally.
They
Oh,
do
yeah,
when we're watching
totally.
it.
It's actually one.
It's like
right.
MST3K kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really funny too because if you do like say a cool combo, people will like cheer and do thumbs up just to kind of cheer you on. Or if you're cheesing, you're spamming the same move over and over again, people will start to boo. So you can kind of guess like what the audience is feeling based on the match, which kind of adds like a nice layer of interactivity to it on both sides.
That's the mark of a good game, though, where people can sit. I mean, you can sit and watch a fighting game, and watch it, different characters, over and over, and just have fun watching. That's a sign of a fucking good game.
Now, it has a lot of good content in it. I know that.
Yeah.
I mean, and going back and playing the old Mortal Kombat, like Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2, I know you said, like, you love playing Mortal Kombat 2, but, like, going back and playing those, I mean, they're actually, to me, are terrible fighting games now.
Oh, really?
By standards.
Well,
They're
I wouldn't
very
say
hard to
terrible,
play.
but like looking in
They're
retrospect,
dated.
they're primitive.
They're primitive, they're
Very
dated,
primitive.
but, I mean, I know from playing the new one, they've polished, the gameplay, they've studied and done their homework, but, I mean, would you truly say it's like as deep and as balanced as some of the other fighters on the market, or do you think maybe that if there is one sort of weakness, that's Mortal Kombat's fault?
Right. It's always a hard thing to say because you really can't get a gauge for how balanced the game is until millions of people have played it. Millions of pros have had their eyes on it, and it's gone through the the rigors of actual tournament play. But in my eyes, I feel like this new Mortal Kombat, more than any other before it, is striving for a level of technicality and detail that was never quite there in the series. And I think that's the most important thing. In terms of balance, I mean, that could always be remedied because you're now with the advent of, online connectivity.
Updates,
there's going to be updates, there's going to be patches. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 has already patched a lot of the buggy things in the game. I can easily see the same thing for Mortal Kombat, and there's DLC down the road, so I'm sure that it's going to have a long-term online support.
And you have a big background in Street Fighter, so
Yeah.
I mean, do you think other people who are like deep, like the Super Street Fighter 4
Yeah.
players, they're like gonna come to Mortal Kombat and
There's
they're
going to be a
gonna
ton of crossover.
They're gonna enjoy it. Okay,
Yeah, I
'cause
mean-
that seemed to be some of the concern is that they might like it, but they're like, I want to go back to MVC3 or Super Street Fighter 4.
That's the thing too. I think Mortal Kombat is a very smart product because one, not only does it appeal to the old school fans that like Mortal Kombat 2 and Mortal Kombat 3, but it also has a lot of crossover appeal to the hardcore audience that like other fighting games like Street Fighter because it's very mindful of the elements that make those games really fun to a hardcore player. So I mean, it's already been announced. It's picked up at EVO, which is the primary fighting game tournament
Big deal.
in the U.S. So it's good for them, good for NetherRealm Studios, and Ed Boon and the guys certainly
All
deserve
right,
that.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Marvel vs. Capcom or Mortal Kombat?
Ooh, okay. Here's the thing.
Well, according to your reviews, there's no question.
Yeah, one or
Okay.
the other.
Well, let
If you
me
had-
say this.
If you had just a yes or no answer.
I think you might be going the other way than we expect.
Here's the thing. People play fighting games for different reasons. I'm gonna say if we were to purely base it on in terms of design and reinventing itself, because both games had not been seen really in their form for like
You have
10
two
years.
games in front of you. You can only play one till the end of time. Which one are you going to take?
I think Patrick's auditioning for a role in public relations.
or politics.
Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat.
Nice.
Ding, ding, ding.
Thank you, Lord Raiden. I am called Smoke. Why are you here in Outworld?
To participate in a tournament to save Earthrealm. Join us, Smoke.
All right, so all next week we are at a bevy, a veritable overload of Sony events.
A cornucopia, if you will.
Yes.
They had a whole week.
A potpourri, a hodgepodge.
Yeah, they had Infamous in Seattle, which I didn't attend, and then they had I think Resistance,
and
Ratchet,
this week.
Twisted Metal,
and Uncharted.
I
mean, the thing is, Sony's got an amazing year just in terms of the number of games they've got. You look at Xbox, which
what have Xbox,
I guess
apart from Gears 3, what have they
Gears
got?
and Forza, I think, is their year.
I don't even
Forza does not
Forza,
a year make.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's the thing is that those two big games, and you look at Sony. I mean, Killzone already out there.
Yeah.
SOCOM came out, which I don't think delivered, but or at least the reviews seem to be kind of all over the map.
Yeah, it's
but
not a bad game.
That's cool. Yeah, it's
They
good.
do have a stellar Christmas lineup, though.
Oh, I mean, you look at Uncharted, Resistance, which is looking better and better every time I see it.
I agree.
And Infamous, I think, is going to be amazing in the summer in June. So
Ratchet and Q4. I always enjoy those games.
a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, no, they had all these events. So I only attended the Uncharted one. But and this was their kind of big multiplayer reveal for Uncharted 3, and
that's all it was multiplayer. Yeah.
And you got to admire the Naughty Dog guys. I mean, they built effectively sort of game of the year with Uncharted 2, which had multiplayer, but the single player was really I think where why the awards were being given to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, I think they set out saying, hey, we really want to be super competitive with our multiplayer. And I mean, people probably seen the Techno trailer that announces that, and it's it looks more ambitious, more detailed than the last multiplayer. The thing that I think I like and everyone else is excited about are these sort of cinematic moments in multiplayer where you see the tanker truck turning over or the airplane landing. And that's,
there's the one where the one team is on the plane.
Yeah.
The other team is in the trucks following the plane, trying to get onto the plane.
It reminds me of that, Jeep sequence from Uncharted where you're jumping between the Jeeps and stuff. And that, imagining that with multiplayer gets me really, really excited.
So does it play out in real time, kind of like in Uncharted 2 where the building is kind of falling over? Or is it kind of like in these canned sequences like what Killzone 3 kind of does?
Yeah, there's stuff that's there's sort of these lead in and lead out moments, and I think they're sort of events on the map. But it's certainly not that one guy's like the driver of the truck and you're trying to steer.
You don't pilot the
it
plane or the trucks or anything like that. It's all they just kind of roll on. They're probably driving on to infinity. I mean, I don't know if I played it long enough to figure that out or not, but
yeah, and it's definitely not the entire multiplayer experience is not like that.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's a little sequence, or much like in a multiplayer map, like a nuke's about to go off and then it gets triggered or something in the middle of the map. So it's sort of those random events, but at least it's something different, and that's what Uncharted's known for, those big set piece moments. So that's interesting and exciting. And they're doing, I mean, ton of stuff with like the Facebook and the Uncharted TV and
You
the
can upload all your
Metal
videos. You
Unlocks.
can edit your videos.
I think if you're a shooter gamer who's played any half decent shooter over the last like 3 or 4 years, you'll be familiar with a lot of the ways they're bringing some of that first person integration, just of the weapons customization, the perks, how to customize your character down to the
You
nth
get
degree.
like something for everything you do in that game. Whether you get gold or experience points, it is like literally every little thing you do, you get rewarded in some way. Like they're very
can
good
buy
at dropping the
upgrades.
breadcrumb.
Yeah, so
trail
there's a
now.
lot of density, and that's what I admire about it. I think the biggest challenge they face is just problem that I think even Gears has to some degree. It's like it's that first versus third person multiplayer, and it's like third person multiplayer is it's hard to be really successful.
Well, it
with
is.
any
I
third
mean,
person.
in
Even
all-
Red Dead, it's like
In all honesty, like no matter how well they do it, it always is a little more clunky in third person than first person. There's always that awkward moment where you're like going into cover and you see the guy, but it's too late. You've already started the animation to get into cover, and you get shot in the head. I mean, it's just it's almost impossible to be as responsive in a third person.
I wonder
game.
should they have gone first person? Would that have been crazy, right?
No,
Uncharted 3 multiplayer first person?
I don't think so, because if you look at how Uncharted 2 multiplayer goes, the biggest thing I like about it is that it being third person and you jumping around climbing, it really
Right, the traversal
it really
and the
plays up the
sense of height.
verticality of the stage design, right? And the gameplay suits that, and it's
It also makes you a sitting duck a lot of the time when you're climbing up somewhere.
If it had gone first person, it would have turned into Mirror's Edge.
Yeah.
But the thing I will say is that it's a little clunky to start off, but I mean, and I must admit, by the time I actually got to sit down, because naughty Sony, there weren't enough pods to go around last week.
Yeah, it was tough.
By the time you and I sat down, I was half cut because I'd been drinking several vodkas. But I will say the first half of the game, the first game that we played, I was all over the place. I was getting spanked, but then it clicked. And then all of a sudden, it's like I'm on a kill streak. I'm dropping people with shots to the head. Once you get a feel for it, and this was me going in with...
don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming the game. I'm not saying the game was clunky. It's just third-person shooters
Third
in a
persons
multiplayer environment
can be
in
very,
general.
very clunky, but I think it's one of those. It surprised me how once you got the feel of it, and I was playing with no customization whatsoever. I'd gone in with like just a bog standard character, hadn't messed it around, and then I really started to get into it and have a buttload of fun. I mean, there was you were one side of me, Jeremy Hoffman was the other. We kept on looking over and killing Hoffman, and that was
Off
good.
TV.
Indeed. But yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised with the way it works.
I guess the one thing I would say about it is that it's not particularly innovative. Bringing in some of the story elements is kind of unique, but I almost feel like this sort of gets it up to the level of all the other shooters
Yeah, it
out
has
there.
parity with other Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing is, Uncharted 3, it's going to be an amazing single-player campaign. I mean, they haven't really shown much of it, but even, like, those little gameplay snippets in the VGA trailers, like all that stuff in water, and I was, I think talked with them about this on GTTV. It's like imagine, multiplayer on some of those water maps that you saw in the VGA trailer, and like, holding a guy underwater, and I mean, I'm sure there's tons that they can do there with the sequences. But yeah, I mean, I admire though that they're pushing multiplayer when they don't really need to. I mean, Uncharted is a game that could get away with no multiplayer.
But on the other hand, I mean, would you say Uncharted is sold as well as it deserves to sell?
No, but I mean, a lot of that's function of I think being on PlayStation only,
Install base,
and I mean, it's sort of like I think God of War is ahead of it a little bit, but God of War doesn't have multiplayer. I don't know. I agree with you that it's great that they're doing it, but the single player is going to be worth $60 by itself. So I think the other stuff is an added bonus.
So Twisted Metal, Mr. Jaffe's upcoming game, always a favorite here at GT.
We love our Jaffe.
He's awesome. Now, I have not played Twisted Metal. Ryan is going to jump in here. He's been running audio for us today. He did get to see it. What's the dealio?
It's definitely Twisted Metal. I mean, just riffing off what you guys were just saying, it is still Twisted Metal. You have a lot of hits to take people down. If you're really good at the game, you can kill people. But there's still that kind of learning curve to jump in there and actually kind of make that progress. It's a fun game to mess around with. They're definitely doing tons and tons of changes and focus testing. Jaffe told me he wishes he could never show it to the press and just basically have like a secret army of testers that were like assassinated immediately afterwards and just fine-tune the game. But like the nuke mode from E3 was completely retooled, so now it's working on innings instead of simultaneous stuff. And it's funny though, because something like we'd seen the helicopter before, but they've invented the Juggernaut.
The Juggernaut, which is a great big truck.
It's
and
a Big Mac truck.
Yeah, anybody who watched Knight Rider in the 80s will be very familiar with that sort of truck. You can basically, it's a big tank. It's kind of slow as it trundles around. It's got mines on the side it can drop out, But the really cool thing is you can have two. It can lower its the tail, and two drivers can drive in, and then they mount.
It's like Spy
rear.
Hunter.
Yeah, but they got rear and mount and front-facing guns.
The vehicles are way more like it's the vehicles in the past. Twisted Metals always had their own attributes and whatnot, but they were still kind of always like these are cars. Or if you were driving around as that fucking idiot Axel, you were still basically a car. You're just a fucking idiot.
Axel's vehicle though does have a number of uses, especially in some of the new levels that they put in.
The cars have a lot more of a personality. Like they were even saying, like I can't remember which one it was. Was it the? I can't remember. One of the cars is almost like the team's medic. Because there's going to be more. There's going to be more kind of a class-based role thing. I mean, it's not going to be as crazy as like a Team Fortress, but there's definitely more roles that you can play.
How does that work? The car as a medic.
Like you can put down like heal points.
Yeah,
and
you've
stuff
got heal
like that.
points. You've got boosts. You've got perks. If
Put
you
down
will.
heal points.
I know. Basically, it drops. It drops them down. You drive over them, and it's power ups. It gives you armor piercing bullets, or it gives you rocket launchers or whatever. It gives you these little power ups, which is actually really cool. All right, so let's talk about Axel, because Axel has been the bone of contention for so many people.
Well, they haven't showed him.
They haven't showed him, but they've shown his wheels.
He's only like 10% of the model.
But they showed us 3 maps all told.
Oh wait, Jeff. Oh my God, are you secretly Axel?
I can't discuss what my role is in the game.
Oh my God, we figured it. Exclusive right here
I
on
have to
Invisible
recuse myself from
Walls.
discussion because you probably saw the footage of GTTV. I just play an inmate in the asylum.
An inmate named Axel.
Calypso has.
Were you acting?
Yeah, I have a big live action sequence in Twisted Metal.
No, I'm just saying, were you acting, or are you just being yourself?
I'm just insane. Yes, patently insane.
So
here's my question: Have any of you guys missed Twisted Metal?
I got a confession.
I see a couple people shaking their heads.
I got a confession to make. I was always a Wipeout kind of guy. I
Those are
loved
two
Wipeout.
completely different games.
Wipeout, Demolition Derby.
I mean, Vigilante,
Vigilante
the
8,
Sony
Interstate
Psygnosis
76.
games. Those are the ones that really caught my attention more than
they
Twisted
kind of
Metal.
went away for a
There's
reason.
I mean, there's something fun about Twisted Metal. I think the biggest challenge that Jaffe faces, which he's fully admitting, is that now charging $60 for a game. It's like there's a big expectation, and a lot of huge games coming out this fall. And Twisted Metal is going to be a fun multiplayer sort of romp, action oriented. But can you get $60 for that? Will you pick Twisted Metal over buying Batman: Arkham City or buying Gears of War 3? That's, I think, the biggest challenge that they have. And Jaffe's gone from epic games with God of War to something super small like Calling All Cars, and this is definitely it's
somewhere
a
in the
full
middle.
scale product. Yeah, somewhere in the middle, but
it goes back to the conversation you guys were having about Uncharted and install base. And let's be honest, Twisted Metal is 99% multiplayer, right? Yeah. And they said there's going to be some sort of persistence, so there's that going to be kind of
that
fun
carrot
multiplayer.
On a stick. Like I genuinely think it's going to be a really fun game to play.
But can it support
multiplayer.
that kind of install base?
And also, the one thing I will say is that
install base support it.
Yeah,
all the events we went to last week were all multiplayer. The one with the netcode that was the jankiest was Twisted Metal.
Oh yeah, it crashed a lot.
It was crashing a lot. It was janky when you kicked off. Yeah, it was. I mean, they need to tighten up that netcode. I know it is obviously a preview version. Yeah. It won't be Gold Master for at least another 3 to 4 months. But I hope they're going to focus on that a lot.
Graphics. Every time I see the game, not impressed. Am I wrong?
There's a lot of stuff going on, but yeah, I mean, it's not like
it's looking better, but I mean, it's not, it's
not a steel show.
There's
it's not God of War, right?
Yeah, it's not God of War, not Uncharted.
It does what it needs to do. It doesn't need to be this visually stunning game, but there are certain levels where you're driving around and literally the walls are changing. There's things rising and falling, and that's what I was going to say. Axel comes in very useful because as a team-based game, one of Axel's moves is basically like a ground pound that pushes everybody off into lava pits, and that's actually really kind of fun. The thing I do like Ryan said, is the vehicles have way more personality. They have their own specific jobs to do now. So if you work as a team, helicopter, you pick somebody up with a magnet, and you can literally fly one of your teammates around, shooting the shit out of everything. Or you can pick up an enemy, fly really high up, and drop them on another enemy. So they've got a lot of good stuff in there. I just hope that netcode is solid enough come September, October.
Where was the skill? Where was the strategy? I mean, shoot, drive, nothing.
Those games had both skill and strategy. You're racing in a city, going 100 miles per hour, blasting everything as you go. Speed, strategy, skill.
All right, so was it last week you and I went back and forth about whether they'd show the next Nintendo console at E3? You said they wouldn't. I said they would.
Humble pie table for one. No, I got it wrong. I got it wrong.
I don't think you have got it wrong.
Who knows? Based on the rumors. I don't know if they'll show it. I think they might. It looks like they're going to announce it over the next 3 to 4 months.
Well, I think they, they have to say something, right? I mean, I think it's Nintendo needs to introduce where they're going next. The question is, I think, what is the roadmap? Is it going to be Iwata getting out there saying, hey, we're working on something new and we'll tell you more about it, here's a vision? Remember, even with the Wii, I mean, at first they announced they were doing the system, and then they didn't even show the controller, and then they showed the controller at TGS, and then I think the next year they showed games. So it was a longer rollout for Wii. So I think some of these reports that are coming out that you're going to see all first and third party
screen on the hand.
yeah, and first and third party games all playable at E3 this year. I mean, that's ridiculous.
I don't
that's
think
not
we're
going to
gonna,
happen.
no. I think whatever they're going to announce, they're not going to release the console till probably fall of next year, maybe September if we're lucky. So
Who knows though? I mean, it's the thing with Nintendo is that they're really unpredictable. I mean, you remember, Vitality Sensor they announced a couple of years ago, hasn't been heard from since. So it's, I think it's clear that they have a roadmap where they want to go. I think, the most interesting thing that I think everyone wants to figure out is, like, what is the hook? Because, Reggie has been pretty public in saying, oh, we're not just going to do Wii HD.
Well, here, I'll run down actually what the rumors are for the sake of the people who don't spend their entire lives on the internet looking at rumors about Nintendo's next console. So here's the rundown of what's flying around there. It's supposed to be unveiled at E3. It's supposed to be more powerful than the current gen systems, meaning the 360 and the PS3. Backwards compatible with Wii software. Some kind of built-in HD screen on the controller. They're saying it's like 5 or 6 inches.
Yeah. I mean,
wouldn't that make the controller cost about $200 by itself?
Maybe that's the entire system. Maybe that is it. You just buy a controller.
Yeah. No, to be fair, some of these rumors right here are a little bit dated by now. I mean,
because they happened 3 days ago.
Yeah, I mean 3 days. I mean, geez. I mean, the Nintendo ninjas.
It's a lifetime on the internet.
The Nintendo ninjas have definitely lost their touch here with all this information coming out.
I call bullshit on all this. In all honesty,
a lot of it is probably it's all secondhand. Obviously,
or fifth hand.
It's either complete bullshit as you said, or some of it, the credible stuff, is secondhand stuff coming from the few developers who actually have the dev kits. EA, Ubisoft, and Activision.
But do we even know that they have it? Like, well, again, that's just all.
It's amazing to me. Like, once one rumor hits, and Game Informer had the first story, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I got dev kits. Let me tell you what it is." And I think there's just sort of mentality where everyone wants to feel like they're in the know, so they're just making stuff up. And it will be interesting to see what the innovation is. And it's like, maybe they're just also experimenting with ideas. And I mean, Nintendo does a lot of prototyping of ideas, and things may not make the final system.
I mean, what's being thrown out there now ultimately would make the system cost about $599.
Right, and Nintendo, loves to do things cheap. I mean, my biggest kind of question about this whole, just the philosophy of doing this, HD system, this kind of level of graphics, you got to remember the first-party Nintendo developers. They don't know how to make HD games. They don't have the team size to build these big games. So I really wonder, philosophically, what Nintendo's thinking. If they're really going down this path, Miyamoto and his teams, they don't have enough resources in Japan to do this. So are they going to start doing more things like we saw with Other M, partner with other developers? Maybe that's why they're briefing third parties, because they want to get,
are we going to see even less software than
you look at how much third-party software, is released for the Wii. I mean, when Nintendo software, official Nintendo stuff comes out, it's few and far between. Right. And hopefully, 9 times out of 10 it's excellent. But if it wasn't for the third parties, that the Wii would have been a dust bowl.
And it's one thing for third parties to invest, a couple million in a Wii game, but now, if you got to do really these blockbuster games, it's really interesting. So right now, the strategy doesn't make a lot of sense, I think. But
eventually, Nintendo has to do it, right? They can't keep making standard definition games till the end of time.
But it's just maybe we're going to have, a Zelda with full voiceover and huge next gen visuals. I mean, it's like, I don't think that's something that Nintendo's going to be able to build. Is Kojima going to build that for him or something?
Curve, yeah.
And it's like, that's why I really wonder, Nintendo is known for great first-party software, and I just don't know, what kind of software they're going to build for this device. And, it's great that, Rockstar might have a dev kit, et cetera, but I don't think they're not the kind of company that's just going to chase the Xbox 360 market.
I don't know. See, I do kind of disagree with that a little bit. Nintendo isn't known, for doing that, being cutting edge on the software end.
Well, no, their ideas are cutting edge. It's
they go for the cheapest costing stuff to keep their systems cheap. That's what Wii was. But some of this stuff, if it is any of it's true, they said they've been working on these games, the first party software, for several months now. Sure. And Wii development, actually, they do develop it in HD, and it's scaled down on the Wii because they can't do it. And they have a huge war chest of money and stuff. They can definitely bring in the resources really quickly to get those people on there. I do think.
It's like, it's one thing, you look
change of culture too.
And they're still finishing up, Zelda, remember? And it's like, I don't know
how long
exactly
they've been
what
working
to
on
that.
that?
And it's like,
if that's even still coming out on Wii.
but I mean, you can't, to make a game like that and scale it
They're
up.
pulling a Twilight Princess with that game.
And you said Nintendo likes to do things that people don't predict. Everyone predicts, like Nintendo has this like history of doing like, the lowest costing stuff. They're not, they wouldn't do this HD stuff. What if this is what they're doing? Like no one's expecting this. I mean, I think it's too early. I agree. It's too early. A lot of this stuff is just conjecture, and it's not really that founded yet. But in terms of the roadmap, I mean, they have that investor meeting in Japan on the 26th. I think they got to say something at that. Even just the confirmation that it's coming at E3. And as far as like stuff at E3, I mean, I think they'll show off some demo reel or something at the most. I don't know if they're gonna have playable stuff.
No, honestly, the hardcore people are not their demo anymore. I mean, they know that there are going to be hardcore people around this table. You say, right, there is a brand new Zelda coming with this new console. Yes, we will all pre-order it because we're good old saps, because we actually do love that gaming experience. But their demographic has moved on now to, it is the Wii Fit demographic. It is the, Just Dance demographic, and those are the people that they're going to want to, they've made their money on the Wii 100 times over. They don't give a shit about the Wii. The Wii's now in price drop mode. So I think whatever they do is going to be, predominantly aimed at that wider demographic than the new 360 or the new, PS4 will ever be.
And let's assume it is true, and they do have this HD console, and it is coming out next year. Does it become the Dreamcast? Where, you had this little technological leap, but then a year later, the other machines just leapfrog it and make it seem...
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be... I think we're only hearing half the story. I mean, Nintendo's a smart company, and I think, to your point, Marcus, like, there's got to be some kind of bigger twist to it. And I've heard, some people told me, it's really about co-op play and the idea of, like, two people playing together in an interesting way, one on the screen, the controller screen, one on the TV. Like, I think there's got to be a bigger story there about how they're going to try and bring, families together or, like... It just can't be like, we're doing, a system that's a little bit better than Xbox 360 and HD. I mean, that's just not Nintendo. No, it's not. And it doesn't make sense. It will cost too much money. And, it's also, it puts them in a real vulnerable position, like you said. I mean, setting them up to, be Dreamcasted. Because, who knows, what 360 or PS3 is going to do. Last year 360 brought out that slim 360 that a lot of people rebought, and nothing prevents them from bringing out, like the iPhone comes out every year, bring out another 360 this year or next year. We, could have more memory or extra features, and Nintendo just it just doesn't make sense. So I really wonder kind of what's going on here. Behind the scenes, I'm sure there's some, level of truth that they're exploring stuff. And, the other thing is Nintendo is so secretive. For all we know, they may be seeding third parties with a dev kit that's only sort of half the story. Well, yeah, or half the story. It's like, it's like sending out a Revolution dev kit but without the controller. And it's like they may say, like, here's our architecture for the graphics, and we're not going to tell anyone until E3 what the input device or something.
Well, that's exactly it. Because if anybody, if you've been working, in-house at any publisher and you've seen the first generation of the dev kits that they send out. So, I was, at Vivendi when, there were the first generation of the PS3 dev kits were sent out. They look nothing like a PS3.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Nintendo do not send this stuff out. It's probably some
they're usually just PCs.
Bland little PC type box that you plug in and that's it. There's no controller. There's nothing. So a lot of this, the HD screen stuff, I do call shenanigans on. The one thing I will be really looking forward to is to finding out how they're going to integrate the 3DS, because I am sure that they have got something really spectacular.
Well, but I would agree, but it's also they've talked about these sort of remember the Wii DS connectivity and the cable and
the
Wii Connect 24
GBA stuff.
Well, they've talked about that for years and years and years, and it's never really panned out. So you'd hope they get their stuff together, but I also would have hoped that 3DS would have launched with an internet browser and an eShop on day one, and that's not there. So
I think when the console ships, they will have announced that it'll be really cool.
Oh yeah, and that's
someday.
I think you can at least count on Nintendo, maybe painting a picture of where they're going to go in the future. I was in New York yesterday and had lunch with Steve Totilo at Kotaku, and he was saying, well, maybe then they're going to bring out the Vitality sensor and sort of scale back the Wii and make the Wii $99, keep that for the mainstream and then make something more for the hardcore. But I don't know. It's a really sort of strange time. I mean, it's exciting because I think a lot of us thought, we're not going to hear much at E3 about anything. But you think about, what could Nintendo really say at E3 this year besides talk about 3DS and a couple Wii games? I mean, they need a big story, and they stole the show last year with 3DS. And I'm sure their hope this year is to to get a lot of buzz for whatever they're doing. I just it's amazing to me anticipation that's created just by saying Nintendo's making this console, though.
Because they break all the ground, that's why.
Mm.
Because they ultimately are the ones who shape the industry. Whether you buy their console or not, they end
Right.
up influencing what the other guys do.
You're right, but what's interesting is there's nothing really groundbreaking that we've heard about this. It sounds very Me Too, which is not
Which is
Nintendo.
very
So that's
un-Nintendo,
what's
yeah.
strange. And I think everyone's taking it at face value. It's like imagining, what would it be like
Mario
if Rockstar
with 8
did?
billion polygons.
Yeah, and I don't think
just throw something out there for the moment. I mean, let's jump away from Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo, whether they like it or not, they've got us talking about E3 this year and what they're going to say. Sony, we know what their lineup is. Microsoft have been very, very quiet. They've not had any major releases in the first half of this year. We know the Gears 3 beta's out. You mentioned Forza. I don't think that's going to be.
It's not going to move the needle. Right.
So Microsoft have to bring it, because right now they are probably lagging in last place for the Christmas lineup.
Connect.
I mean, you say that, but they're also they're selling number one every month.
They're selling number one. So, but unless they're prepared to go almost the Nintendo route with with a Wii, and it's like, all right, it's all connected, it's all connected across the board. I wouldn't be surprised to see some major announcement out of Microsoft this year that they are bringing a new console in 2012.
Johnny Cage wins.
He got caged.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Jeff Keighley, thank you so much for showing up, man.
Thanks
I think
for
you added a
inviting
lot
me,
to the show. Finally, we got you
I look
on
forward
the
to
show.
coming back on soon.
That was probably the longest show we've done. I mean, this has been a bloody good week.
We gave Keeley some extra love here since he made it on the show. Also, just a ton of really good stuff to talk about this week. So.
It's getting exciting. I mean, this is
it is starting to heat up
like
finally.
6 weeks away from E3. I know we're working on some crazy E3 plans.
Can we talk about any of that yet? I don't think we can.
Just tease. We're doing E3 bigger than we ever have before on Spike and Game Trailers, and we got a lot of amazing stuff coming. I think it's going to be a really good E3, and regardless of what consoles get announced or what really happens, I think they're going to be amazing games there.
Can you comment on the rumors that there's going to be a 50-foot inflatable Dan Kaiser outside the E3 Convention Center?
Cannot comment. Confirm or deny yet.
So before we close things out, we do actually have some beta codes to give away for the Gears of War 3 beta.
Something for the Xbox fans, because they've been rather neglected today.
Now, we don't have a ton of them, and you're going to have to follow us on Twitter, the Invisible Walls Twitter, to get them. But stay tuned to our Twitter over the weekend, and we'll be giving those out. So make sure you check it out. Once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Invisible Walls is up and out.